Hello, I'm JP Duncan, your host on Erskine's SIFE, Point, and Counterpoint. This show discusses current issues with the intent of getting our community to examine our society's ethical behavior. Today I have with me two Erskine College students, a senior, Lauren Parrish, and a sophomore, Sam Collier, to discuss the issue of accommodating disabilities. The sequence of this presentation will be to present one side of the issue for no more than 2 minutes, and then to answer a question from the opponent. Then the roles will be reversed, and finally both sides will have 1 minute to summarize and present their closing arguments. Now that you know the sequence, let me introduce the cases to be discussed. The first case involves Casey Martin, a professional golfer with a bad leg due to a circulatory disorder. Walking the golf course causes Martin considerable pain and poses a serious risk of hemorrhaging and fracture. He asked the PGA for permission to use a golf cart during tournaments, but the PGA turned him down, citing the rule of prohibiting carts in the top professional tournaments. The second case involves Callie Smart, a popular freshman cheerleader who was wheelchair-bound with cerebral palsy. She was kicked off the team because several parents believed that she did not meet physical qualifications necessary for cheerleading and that she was given special treatment due to her condition. As such, the question for today's discussion is, should persons with disabilities be given special privileges due to their current circumstance? Let's get started. First, Lauren will present the view that we should not discriminate against persons with disabilities. Lauren?
Thank you, JP. The first point I'd like to make is that the Americans with Disabilities Act requires reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. In the case of the golfer, reasonably accommodating for him to play would be allowing him to use the golf cart due to his leg condition. In the case of the cheerleader, however, allowing her to use the wheelchair accommodates her disorder in which she has no control over her body movement. Not allowing disabled persons to participate would do more harm than good. Studies show that disabled persons participating in sports have more confidence and higher levels of motivation. Studies also show that teammates of persons with disabilities have a greater appreciation, understanding, and respect for their fellow teammates with disabilities. The second point I'd like to make is that they should be allowed to participate as long as their disability does not fundamentally alter the nature of the activity. The nature of golf is about the essence of shot making, using the club to hit the ball to progress from the teeing ground to the hole some distance away with as few strokes as possible. The fatigue experienced in the game of golf is primarily caused from the psychological issues involving the stress and motivation of the game, not from actually walking the entire course. As far as the cheerleading case goes, the essence of cheerleading is to inspire school spirit and energize the crowd and the fans. Because Callie can do all these activities from her wheelchair, this doesn't interfere with the nature of cheerleading.
Thank you, Lauren, for that point of view. Sam, do you have a question for her?
I do. What is your reasoning behind disabled students participating on sports teams even though they're not as qualified as other students?
Well, I believe that having a disability shouldn't affect a team or coach's reasoning about whether or not a person can participate on a sports team, because that would involve discriminatory actions against that person. Students who are hurt or disabled have the same desire to play and motivation as persons who are not.
Thank you, Lauren, for that response. Now let's shift to Sam, who will present the counterpoint that discrimination is permitted if it's a business or occupational necessity. Sam?
Thank you, JP. The American with Disability Act does state that reasonable measures should be taken to accommodate certain limitations, but it is only allowed if it does not change the nature of the sport or game. In both instances, the nature of the sport was changed. It's why Aristotle claims we must always first define the nature of something. This is called telos, or the purpose. The purpose of golf is, like Lauren said, to get the ball down to the hole with as few strokes. But we also must remember that things like walking the entire course do add up to cause fatigue. Now, the PGA ruled that Casey Martin was not allowed to use a golf cart because it took away from some of his fatigue, giving him an unfair advantage. In the case of the cheerleader, we must look at what is the purpose of cheerleading. Is it to amp up the crowd, or is it to be able to do the cheers and do the gymnastics? My second point, we must look at the reasons for the rulings in both cases. In the golfer's case, the PGA refusal of letting the golfer play is understandable, considering that the tournament was for money. While in the example of the cheerleader, you really must define the purpose of cheerleading. Is it to amp up the crowd, or is it to do gymnastics and cheers? In Callie's case, the court decided that she should be able to cheer because she was able to amp up the crowd.
Thank you, Sam, for that statement. Now, Lauren, do you have a question for her?
Yes, I do. Sam, what qualifies the purpose of a game or a change in the nature of the game?
It is very hard to say what qualifies or defines this, but instead we must look at who. Most sports have a regulatory body. The PGA board that ruled that Casey Martin could not play was an example of this. In the case of the cheerleader, however, the court ended up defining the nature of the sport. I think it is imperative that every sport have some type of written bylaws or have a regulatory body in charge of defining the purpose and the nature of the game.
Thank you, Sam, for that response. Now, Lauren, will you please provide us with your closing arguments?
Yes. In conclusion, I would just like to state that equality for all should be considered at the heart of all persons who make decisions based upon persons with disabilities. Having a disability doesn't make you any less motivated or ambitious to play the game. If anything, it makes you work even harder to achieve what you want. Just because a person has a disability doesn't mean that they should not be allowed to play a sport if it doesn't conflict with the primary nature of the game that they are playing.
Thank you, Lauren. Now, Sam, please provide us with your closing remarks.
I agree. Equality for all is necessary. In doing so, we must think about not only those with disabilities, but those without. We must also remember that the nature of a game should not be changed for only a select few, but that there are always ways to ensure everyone has a safe and fun way to play the game or participate in the activities. So as to avoid the problems in these cases, I think a regulatory body should be implemented or formed for each sport to define and enforce the purpose and nature of games and competitions.
Thank you, Sam. Well, it appears that we certainly have two different views on accommodating disabilities. We hope that you, the viewers, enjoyed our discussion, and we hope that you will call in with your comments. Please dial the number 864-379-6588 to reach our call-in recorder and state your position. We hope to read several of your comments on the next show. Until next time, this is JP Duncan signing off for Erskine SIFE, Point, and Counterpoint.